It is not an evidence problem. But the thing that makes it even stronger if you get to Romans 2 is people's conscience. Paul says our conscience also bears witness. And he's always telling us that there's something more. There is something more. And that is why this evidence, this reality, has to be suppressed, and it has to be suppressed fastidiously and continually. And that's what Romans 1 says. They suppress the truth about God in unrighteousness. And all of the verbs around that, they're all active doing words. You could actually translate it to say, and they go on suppressing the truth about God. It's like, when you was a kid and you're in the pool and you're trying to, you'd always, for some reason, I'd always try and touch the bottom of the pool with whatever it was that was floating on the surface. And you have a volleyball, right? Very hard to get to the bottom. And to hold it under the surface, you've always got to be kind of doing this, as you're swimming along, as it threatens to pop up. And it's like that. It's an ongoing thing to keep it down, that it might not be known. And this is a day-to-day effort in the world around us. What are the taboos in society? In polite company, what are the two things you never talk about? Politics and religion. The two things that give us meaning for life. No, don't talk about that. Too controversial, too hard. Rather turn the footy on. I used to work in a big law firm in Brisbane, and one of the things that, I'm so glad I'm not anymore, let me put it that way, but I was in one of these big law firms, and this is an environment in which people work tremendously long hours. Huge, ridiculous. There was even a couple of cases while I was there of people falling asleep on the floor in their office overnight and then getting up and going again in the morning. And they worked like dogs all week. And the most exciting thing that happened in the day was that you went over the road and bought sushi. And people would talk about it for 2 hours beforehand. It's coming, lunch break, That was the life. And then on the weekend, 4:59 p.m., already the bottles of alcohol are coming out of the fridge, and that's it. They don't know who they are from 5 p.m. on a Friday until Monday morning. And I used to look at that and think, what is wrong? What's going on? Is it just me? Do you know what was going on? And people will deny it to their dying day, but that is suppressing the truth about God in unrighteousness. The evidence threatens. A sober thought threatens. A non-busy moment threatens, because it's always there. But it's a public square effort as well. It's not just a personal day-to-day, it's a public square effort. Israel Folau. What was his true crime? It's interesting, I was reading an opinion piece in The Australian by somebody who's usually quite conservative on these matters. And they said, look, I don't agree with what Israel Folau said. But, look, I think he should have the right to say it. And said, and by the way, I don't agree with what he said, because if what he said is correct, if those are the criteria for hell, then I'll see you down there. To which I was going, yes, right? But here's the problem. The one thing people will not tolerate is the notion that they might be judged and found wanting before God. The notion that actually there might be a God who demands something of us. The notion that actually there might be eternal consequences to a temporal life. Those themes will not be tolerated. Do so much of the legislative programs in our parliaments can be described according to what Paul says in Timothy, where he says, pray for kings, pray for those who are in high positions, pray that our lives of godliness will be lives of peace. Why? Because God desires all people everywhere to come to a knowledge of the truth. And so much of what the government does, whether it is to suppress Christian witness or change the law, really could be described in that phrase, they are opposing the knowledge of the truth. School freedom legislation that was in the federal parliament at the end of 2018. There was a piece of legislation which was unbelievably bold. All that it really did was target faith schools only. No other group. And faith-based schools, what would have happened if that legislation passed? Had they taught their beliefs about anything really, but particularly controversial issues, they would have been subjected to lawsuits. There's no doubt. And there was a great, fanfare and PR campaign in the media that that's not what this is about. That's what it was about. And you look at that and you think, why? Well, I'm so glad I went to a Christian school. There's a lot of people at my Christian school who were not Christians when they started, and they weren't from Christian families. But today, I just got a message on Facebook from one the other day, actually. They're now Christians, following God. There's 2 pastors of large churches in Brisbane who were converted at my Christian school in my year level. Why would you go after Christian schools? Opposition to the knowledge of the truth. Why would you go after Christian families? I did a segment on The Truth of It the other day, talking about what they call conversion therapy laws, which basically have an end game of saying if you're a parent and your child identifies this way or that, and you try and encourage them out of it, or you want to take them to get proper medical care or anything, then you're going to be in trouble with the law. Why would they do that? Why would that foster agency over in WA not enable a Christian couple to foster children? Do you know, the thing I'm most grateful for in my life, maybe apart from salvation, but is that I grew up in a Christian family. What do you do? Opposition to the knowledge of the truth. Target the Christian family. Whittle them down. So much of what is going on can be explained this way. Do you know, I used to actually think in my naivety that this was a fight for freedoms. That we're looking for freedom of speech and freedom of religion and freedom. It's interesting. The only people that really get in trouble and lose their freedom are people who tell the truth. It's never the person that goes out there and says you can be an asexual, non-binary, genderqueer and find out who you really are who gets in any trouble. The only person who gets in trouble is the person who says, actually, I think there's only boys and girls. There's 2 genders. Boom. You're finished. These are the sorts of things that attract opposition time and again. And people said when we started the Human Rights Law Alliance, surely you'd take on cases where people just lost their freedoms but it wasn't particularly religious. Do you know what? There's barely any. It's not actually so much a fight for freedom as it is a fight for truth. And it's opposition to the knowledge of the truth that we see. And, it's almost like it's a spiritual battle, and the truth is the target, not so much freedom. It's a societal thing, the suppression of the truth. It's happening all around us. That even explains Kathy Clubb's case, which I've mentioned many times. Why get in the way of a lady who's making simple offers of help to women who might be aborting their children and saving the lives of hundreds of babies in the process? Why? Because the truth must be stopped. Why would the New South Wales Transport Minister tear down a billboard that makes a simple statement that a heart beats at 4 weeks? Truth. Opposition to the knowledge of the truth. The lies seldom get attention. I think Wendy's flat out getting them to take down sexually explicit billboards. It's so hard. But these ones get all the attention. But also I think this is why we need to expect in a culture like ours. We need to expect people to react to truth. So a lot of what we do, people say, how do you do what you do and stay positive and all this? A lot of it's just expectations management. How do you imagine people are going to react? Well, negatively. Well, because why? Well, the world's a fallen world. And if you're in a fallen world, it's going to be a bit of an uphill push to get a fallen world to accept the light when it's in darkness. What's the nature of people? Well, people are fallen. So it's always going to be difficult to get people who, the Bible makes very clear, are in the dark to see the light. And they're not going to necessarily welcome it every time. You need God to help you with that. Hey, one more thing. I've been looking at the metrics and I've figured out something. You guys are watching the videos and not subscribing. So please help us out a great deal by hitting the like button and then hitting subscribe, hitting the bell as well so you get the notifications. It helps us out a really great deal, and you can click here to see more videos.